We think of chocolate as this simple, everyday luxury. But what if I told you that every single bar you've ever eaten is a survivor? Seriously, each little cocoa bean has to run this gauntlet of invisible threats, and any one of them could have completely destroyed it. So let's pull back the curtain on that perilous journey.
So what is this great danger we're talking about? Is it some kind of exotic pest? A terrible disease? Nope. The truth is actually much more basic, and it stalks the bean from the second it's harvested all the way to the factory door.
Believe it or not, the #1 threat to a cocoa bean is water, or more specifically, moisture. Right after the beans are fermented, which is what starts to develop all that amazing flavor, a critical battle begins, the fight to get them perfectly dry.
And this, right here, is the magic number. Every single bean has to be dried to a moisture content of between 7 and 8%, not 9%, not 6%. It is an incredibly narrow target, and hitting it is absolutely make or break.
And there's a very good reason that window is so tight. If a bean is even a little too wet, we're talking over 8%, mold starts to grow, giving it this strong, nasty flavor that just ruins it. But if it's too dry, say under 6%, the bean becomes so brittle it just shatters during processing. It is a true razor's edge.
So, how in the world do farmers walk this tightrope? Well, they've basically got two options for drying the beans. And as we're about to see, each path comes with its own unique set of dangers.
In places with lots of reliable sunshine, like Ghana, farmers can use the traditional method, sun drying. You can just picture it, right? Beans spread out on these huge mats, soaking up the sun, getting raked by hand to make sure they all dry evenly. It's a slow, gentle process. Takes about a week. Sounds kind of perfect, doesn't it?
Well, there's a catch. Leaving all those delicious beans out in the open for a full week makes them vulnerable. While the sun is doing its thing, other things can get in. Because they're just out there, exposed. They can get contaminated with dust, dirt, you name it. Even farm animals or wild animals can wander through. This means that once the beans get to the factory, they need a whole lot of extra cleaning and special precautions.
Okay, so sun drying works if you have sun. But what about in places, especially in Asia, where it's just too wet and humid for that? Well, that's when farmers have to turn to method #2, artificial drying. Now, this usually means using a wood fire to create heat. The problem is, if the system has any leaks, smoke gets into the drying chamber, and that smoky taste completely infuses the beans, giving them an unpleasant, harsh flavor that's just as bad as the mold. The whole batch, ruined.
And even if you manage to keep the smoke out, you're not out of the woods. There's another trap. If you get impatient and try to dry the beans too fast with really high heat, they become super acidic. So it's not just about getting them dry, it's about doing it low and slow. It's yet another delicate balancing act.
Okay, let's say our cocoa bean has made it. It's survived the drying process, it's in that perfect, fragile, stable state. But the journey is not over, not by a long shot. Now it has to wait to be shipped, and this waiting period brings on a whole new set of threats.
The beans get packed into these traditional jute sacks. They're great because they're strong and they stack really well. But they have one crucial property that changes everything. They're breathable. They let moisture pass through. This means the beans are not sealed off from the world, which is both a blessing and a curse.
And here's the curse. That breathability leads to a new problem: off flavors. Cocoa beans are like little sponges for smells. If they're stored anywhere near something with a strong odor, think spices or fuel or chemicals, they'll just soak it right up, and that unwanted flavor can completely ruin the final chocolate.
So after surviving the drying and the storage, our beans now face their final and honestly, most dramatic challenge: being loaded into the hold of a giant cargo ship for a long voyage across the ocean. This is where things get really dangerous.
Picture this. The sacks are loaded onto a ship in the hot, steamy tropics, where it's maybe 30 degrees Celsius. But then, the ship sets sail for the frigid North Atlantic, where the air temperature can drop to near freezing. Inside the sealed cargo hold, this temperature plunge has a crazy effect. The relative humidity of the air skyrockets to 100%.
Now, why is 100% humidity so bad? It's because of a scientific principle called equilibrium relative humidity. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. A cocoa bean will always try to match the moisture level of the air around it. So if the air gets wetter, the bean starts sucking moisture right out of the air to find balance.
And with 100% humidity, that air is totally saturated. It can't hold any more water. So that moisture starts condensing into liquid water on the cold metal surfaces inside the ship. It literally starts to rain inside the hold. That water drips down onto the jute sacks, and suddenly our old enemy, mold, is back with a vengeance.
To prevent this absolute catastrophe, the crew has to take serious action. They have to constantly ventilate the hold, pumping that wet air out. They lay these huge absorbent mats over the cargo, like a giant blanket. And crucially, they make sure the stacks of sacks never, ever touch the cold metal hull of the ship, where the condensation is the worst.
And only after surviving all of that, the razor's edge of drying, the risk of contamination, the threat of strange smells, and that perilous, condensation-filled ocean voyage, only then do the beans finally arrive at the factory, ready to become the chocolate we know and love.
So the next time you enjoy a piece of chocolate, just take a second to remember the incredible, nail-biting journey it survived to get to you. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other foods that we eat every day have a secret, perilous journey we never even think about?